Well, if you're wondering why farmers are so concerned about their farm finances right now, they really just can't catch a break. It's not just because corn prices are below break even for most. It's the fact input prices are so high.
The U.S. has lost the corn crown. We've been the world's top exporter of corn for just about every single year in history.
This isn't some distant economic theory. From Iowa to Indiana, combine harvesters are sitting idle because every bushel they harvest now means deeper losses. Farmers are selling their John Deere equipment on Craigslist and driving Uber at night just to pay their bills. Rural communities are turning into ghost towns. And while American agriculture crumbles, Canada has somehow managed to position itself as the premium choice for global corn buyers. But here's the part that should shock every American. This agricultural disaster wasn't caused by weather, disease, or natural market forces. It was created by our own government's trade policies that accidentally handed our biggest competitive advantage straight to our northern neighbors. The same tariffs and restrictions that were supposed to protect American farmers have instead destroyed their livelihoods, while making Canada billions of dollars richer. So how did the United States go from being the world's corn superpower to watching helplessly as Canada steals our customers with premium prices and long-term contracts? The answer reveals a trade policy disaster so catastrophic that it's reshaping global agriculture right before our eyes. The perfect storm that destroyed American corn. To understand how we got here, and you need to see the cascade of policy disasters that hit American corn exports like a series of economic hurricanes. It started with something that seemed reasonable on paper, protecting American shipping and ensuring quality standards. But in practice, these policies created a perfect storm that made American corn uncompetitive overnight. First came the shipping cost explosion, when the White House imposed fees of up to $1.50 million per trip on China-built cargo vessels. Shipping costs through the Gulf of Mexico jumped 25%, adding $930 million in annual export expenses across the industry. Trans-Pacific container rates, they skyrocketed to nearly $5,000 per container, double the post-COVID normal. But that's not all. The second blow came from what seemed like a minor regulatory change. On March 14, 2025, the Federal Grain Inspection Service raised multi-residue export test fees from $57 to $81 per sample, a 40% increase overnight. Every corn shipment now needs this certification, or risks being turned around mid-ocean. What sounds like a small bureaucratic adjustment added massive costs to every export transaction. The third disaster? Global buyers demanding something American agriculture wasn't prepared for: clean, green, and safe and blockchain-traced corn. Mexico banned GMO corn for human consumption and began favoring grain with low-carbon certificates. Asian and European feed mills quickly copied these requirements into their contracts, and suddenly, 92% of American corn acreage couldn't meet the demand. It gets worse. The Mississippi River system, America's agricultural highway to the world, started failing under pressure. Barge traffic dropped 16% below the 5-year average. New Orleans ports clogged. More than 180 vessels waited at anchor, leaving corn from Iowa and Indiana to literally rot, while farmers lost another 27 cents per bushel, just waiting for ships. The brutal mathematics are undeniable. Higher shipping costs, expensive testing, GMO restrictions, and logistics failures all combine to make American corn the least attractive option in global markets, exactly when buyers had alternatives. America's agricultural apocalypse. The human cost of this policy disaster is staggering, and it's hitting hardest in the communities that feed America. Imagine driving through Shelby County, Iowa, and seeing endless fields of corn that nobody wants to buy. According to Reuters, unsold corn stocks held by U.S. farmers have reached a 6-year high, with over 2.5 billion bushels, that's 68 million tons, trapped in silos across the Midwest. The financial devastation is immediate and brutal. Cash bids in Cedar Rapids are sitting at just $3.74 per bushel for September delivery, while the average cost to grow and harvest that corn is $165.75 per acre. That gap explains why farmers are liquidating equipment, taking night jobs, and watching their generational farms slip into bankruptcy. Reuters reports that some farm families are holding back up to 90% of their crop because selling now would only pile on more debt. These aren't lazy farmers or poor business people. These are the most efficient agricultural producers in human history, and they're being destroyed by policies that make their products unmarketable. The economic destruction extends far beyond individual farms. In Indiana, the Corn Belt economy shrank 6.1% in the first quarter of 2025, the second steepest decline nationwide. With farm incomes evaporating, food aid applications have flooded rural counties. The Food Bank of Indiana reports households seeking help are up by 50% compared to last year, while budget cuts threaten to eliminate 133 million meals for families already struggling to survive. The infrastructure that built American agricultural dominance is crumbling in real time. The Illinois-Mississippi waterway is choking on record low water levels for the third straight year, forcing shippers to lighten loads and adding $20 per ton in transport costs. Rural school districts have shifted to 3-day weeks to save electricity. Gas stations are closing. Diners are shutting down before 6 p.m. because there are no customers left. In Nebraska, irrigation restrictions have forced co-ops to halt grain purchases just to avoid bursting storage bins. Towns along major highways are watching grain trucks disappear, businesses close, and what local newspapers are calling a zombie economy. Buildings still standing, but economic life completely drained out. The final blow comes from the ethanol demand collapse. Midwest ethanol plants are running at just 87.8% capacity, with 25 facilities closed, and 1.26 billion gallons of capacity sitting idle. In Columbus, Nebraska, Valero's plant has eliminated 60% of night shifts, putting 120 workers out of jobs. When ethanol demand crashes, it removes another massive market for American corn, accelerating the price spiral that's destroying farm communities. Canada's billion-dollar Masterstroke. While American farmers are losing their shirts, Canada has executed what might be the most brilliant agricultural strategy in modern history. They didn't compete with U.S. corn on price or volume. It did. They created an entirely different market category that commands premium prices and long-term contracts. The secret weapon? Blockchain technology. Combined with sustainability certification, that makes Canadian corn the safe choice for global buyers worried about quality, traceability, and environmental impact. Every export container carries blockchain tracking from seed to terminal, creating an unbreakable chain of custody that eliminates counterfeiting and quality concerns. But Canada didn't stop there. They committed to what they call the 3 no's: no GMO, no glyphosate, and no carbon emissions above EU thresholds. This isn't just marketing, it's a complete restructuring of their agricultural system to meet the demands of buyers willing to pay premium prices for guaranteed quality and sustainability. The payoff? Extraordinary. According to Grain Farmers of Ontario, Canadian corn is commanding premiums of $1.30 to $1.87 per bushel above Chicago futures. That's 22% to 30% higher than U.S. corn. Even new crop corn is fetching an extra $1.49 per bushel, at least 18% over Chicago prices. It gets even crazier. The biggest breakthrough came in March 2025, when Canada and South Korea signed the Organic Equivalency Arrangement. Years in was this agreement opened the floodgates for Canadian organic grain exports, allowing Ontario co-ops to lock in 5-year supply contracts with major Asian feed mills. Just 3 weeks after the deal took effect. Saskatchewan leveraged currency advantages and the US-EU tariff disputes to sell non-GMO corn to Japan and the Netherlands. Fall 2025 contracts for the EU are now listed at an average 18% premium over Chicago prices, a level that Midwest farmers have never seen and likely never will under current policies. Behind the scenes, Ottawa has created a comprehensive support system that makes Canadian exporters nearly unbeatable. Export development. Canada offers single-lot export credit insurance and reimburses up to 50% of cold chain logistics costs to preserve low-carbon certification. These aren't hidden subsidies. They're openly advertised tools helping Canadian producers meet the quality demands of global buyers. The transportation advantages? Just as impressive. While U.S. corn sits in backed-up Gulf ports, Canadian rail networks run straight into the Midwest, capitalizing on cheaper backhaul rates when containers return empty from Asia. Vancouver is becoming the preferred port for grain exports, not because it's closer, but because it's more reliable and more America-efficient than any American alternative. The premium price revolution. The most shocking aspect of Canada's agricultural victory isn't just that they're winning contracts. It's that they're getting paid more for essentially the same product. This represents a fundamental shift in how global agriculture operates, moving away from commodity pricing toward premium branding based on sustainability and traceability. Canadian corn exporters are now actively marketing their products as premium alternatives to American grain, emphasizing blockchain verification, organic certification, and carbon-neutral production. Asian feed mills and European food processors are paying these premiums gladly because they're not just buying corn, they're buying reputation insurance. In today's global market, where consumers care about environmental and social impact, Canadian corn represents a brand that importers can trust. When a Japanese feed mill buys Canadian corn, they know exactly where it came from, how it was grown, and what its carbon footprint is. When they buy American corn, they're taking risks. The March 2025 Canada-South Korea Organic Equivalency Arrangement shows how fast these premium relationships can develop. Within 3 weeks, Ontario co-ops locked in multi-million-dollar 5-year supply contracts. These aren't spot market deals. They're strategic partnerships that give Canadian farmers stable, profitable markets for years. Meanwhile, American farmers are stuck in a commodity pricing trap where corn is valued purely on price, competing against the lowest-cost producers worldwide. Canadian farmers? They're in an entirely different market, one where corn is valued for its verifiable quality and sustainability. And the transportation logistics? They reinforce this advantage. Canadian exporters say their grain reaches Asian markets 20% faster than American corn, thanks to streamlined port operations and simplified regulatory processes. Fresher grain means better quality, which means even higher prices. The domino effect threatens everything. The corn crisis is just the first domino in what could become the collapse of American agricultural dominance across multiple sectors. If Washington doesn't address the underlying policy problems, the damage will spread rapidly to soybeans, where 92% of U.S. acreage is also GMO, and increasingly unwelcome in global markets. European buyers have already started removing GMO soybeans from their approved supplier lists, following the same sustainability requirements that are destroying American corn exports. Brazil and Argentina, which produce large volumes of non-GMO soy, are now perfectly positioned to capture market share, just like Canada has done with corn. The livestock sector faces even greater threats. American beef and pork rely heavily on GMO corn feed, which means every pound of meat carries a larger carbon footprint than competitors using non-GMO or sustainably produced feed. As carbon taxes and environmental regulations tighten across the globe, American meat will become increasingly expensive compared to Canadian, Australian, or European alternatives that have already committed to net zero production by 2030. But listen to this, the dairy industry could be hit the hardest. Feed costs are climbing, quality corn is scarce, and family farms are facing the biggest bankruptcy wave since the 1980s crisis. Large industrial dairy operations may survive by switching to alternatives or importing Canadian grain, but small, family-run dairies, they're trapped, operating on razor-thin margins with no flexibility at all. The geographic concentration of American agriculture makes things worse. The Corn Belt states, the heart of U.S. grain production, are all suffering from the same policy-induced disadvantages. And unlike diversified economies, these rural communities live or die by agriculture. When agricultural exports collapse, the effects cascade, hitting equipment manufacturers, transportation companies, ag lenders, and every local business that serves these communities. Companies like John Deere and Caterpillar are already seeing reduced demand as farmers postpone equipment purchases. Rural banks are bracing for a wave of loan defaults as farm incomes disappear. The new global agricultural map. What we're seeing isn't a temporary blip. It's the redrawing of global agricultural trade routes that could permanently alter America's position in the world food system. Canada has proven that sustainable, traceable agriculture isn't just ethical, it's highly profitable. And other nations are taking notes. The speed of this transformation has shocked agricultural analysts. According to the Trade North America Consortium, if trends continue, Canada could become the dominant grain supplier for premium markets in Asia and Europe within the next 5 years. That's a complete reversal of decades-old trade patterns. Brazil and Argentina are already deploying blockchain tracking systems similar to Canada's. Australia is investing heavily in sustainable grain production, optimized to meet the same certification standards Canadian farmers have already mastered. The European Union has made it clear. Future trade agreements will prioritize sustainability and traceability over raw volume or lowest price. And right now, American producers are locked into GMO systems with no national tracking infrastructure and are being systematically excluded from the most profitable markets on Earth. Asian buyers, once loyal to U.S. exports because of price and reliability, now realize that Canadian suppliers offer faster delivery, higher quality, and guaranteed compliance, often at a better total cost. These aren't just marketing wins, they're based on real value creation. Transport infrastructure is evolving too. Canadian ports are expanding capacity to handle surging grain exports. American Gulf Coast ports are utilized. Rail networks are now optimized for northbound shipments, creating permanent logistical advantages that the U.S. won't easily reclaim, even if it fixes policy problems. The choice America must make. The United States faces a stark choice, one that will define the future of American agriculture for generations. On one side, adapt. Accept that global markets have moved beyond commodities and invest in the systems needed to compete in sustainability-driven trade. This means building up non-GMO seed development, implementing blockchain tracking, shifting toward carbon-neutral production, and tearing down the bureaucratic barriers that make American exports slow, expensive, and risky. The other path? Stay the course. Keep the protectionist policies, the outdated inspection systems, the short-term politics, and watch as America's once great agricultural empire is hollowed out, farm by farm, job by job. But that's not all. This isn't just an economic issue, it's a political time bomb. Rural communities, which have long supported policies to protect American agriculture, are now seeing those same policies turn into the sword that cuts them down. You can't protect what you can't sell. And if export markets vanish, no amount of domestic support will save these towns from collapse. Canada's success proves there's another way, one that's both profitable and sustainable. And other countries are watching, they're learning, they're adapting. And if the United States doesn't respond fast, it risks being left behind forever. The clock is ticking, and every day of delay means another contract lost, another farm shut down, another rural community drained of life. The corn crisis that's devastating American agriculture right now, it was entirely preventable, and it's still solvable. But only if policymakers are willing to prioritize competitiveness over politics. The question isn't, can American farmers compete with Canadian efficiency and quality? The question is, will American policy even let them try? If this story opened your eyes, hit like, tap subscribe, and ring the bell, because what's coming next could change everything. This is Trump Decoded, and I'll see you in the next episode.